This lesson begins our lesson on research basics with a look at plagiarism. By the end of this lesson, students will be able to define and identify plagiarism, list and explain the ways you can plagiarize, and list the steps necessary to avoid plagiarism. Your cue words are plagiarism, including focusing on the 2 ways you can plagiarize, and avoiding plagiarism by using your own words, citing, and citing. So you guys wouldn't steal, and you wouldn't want to be stolen from, which is why we start our research basics with a look at plagiarism. Plagiarism is the theft of another person's words and or ideas through an improper use or a failure to cite. This means there are actually 2 ways that you can plagiarize. You can plagiarize by using someone else's words as your own and without citing, or by not citing when you've used someone else's ideas. To emphasize this as much as I can, you can plagiarize even if you put it in your own words. Time for some questions. So what counts as plagiarizing? You are plagiarizing if you copy portions or entire papers and present either the portions or the paper as your own work. You are plagiarizing if you don't put quotation marks around quotes. You are plagiarizing if you quote an entire paper or create your own paper out of nothing but quotes. You are plagiarizing if you don't cite your quotes in your paper. You are plagiarizing if you deliberately misquote. You are plagiarizing if you put information into your own words, like a summary or a paraphrase, but you don't cite the information in your paper. You are plagiarizing if you leave sources or make up sources or otherwise falsify sources on your reference page. Time for another question. So, how do we avoid plagiarism? Because that's a lot of things that you can do that plagiarize. First, start by using your own words wherever possible. As a little hint, when you're looking at your source, if you use 7 or more keywords in order from the source, that's still plagiarism. You've still stolen their words. So, we're going to look at this more in the future, but wherever possible, use your own words. Use quotation marks anytime you have to borrow words. And then cite all uses of information in your paper and on your reference page, even if you did put that information in your own words. This one is, again, very, very important because almost always when I tell a student they plagiarized and they're like, well, but I put it in my own words, you need to cite your use of ideas because when we create works, it's all about creating an idea and who that idea really belongs to. So in this case, you need to cite your use of your idea. And finally, you need to use and follow the guidance of a plagiarism checker. It never hurts to have another look and another pair of eyes, and plagiarism checkers help us out with this. Time for a question. Now, you guys have probably heard about common knowledge, and you know common knowledge doesn't need to be cited. So let's take a quick look at common knowledge because it's a really tricky area when we're trying to avoid plagiarism. First off, common knowledge are facts that are so basic, everyone knows them. Because everyone knows them, they don't belong to anybody, so that's why they do not technically need cited. However, it's hard to know when information is common knowledge because just because you know it doesn't mean it's common knowledge. So, information is common knowledge if it's a basic fact, like the fact that water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? Or it's found on at least 5 independent sources. And when I say independent sources, I mean sources that are not linked to each other or a common sponsor. So it's not the same entity paid 5 different people to say this thing, and it's not that they all say the same thing because they all are citing each other. It's 5 independent, completely separate sources. When in doubt, cite it out. Because if you do not know for sure that it is common knowledge, and you even have a remote question about whether or not it's common knowledge, citing it will save you from plagiarizing. Let's have another question. So, skills you'll need to avoid plagiarism. You're going to need to know how to cite. You're going to need to know how to summarize. And you're going to need to know how to paraphrase. Citing is the act of acknowledging where we got the ideas or the words or both from. Summarizing and paraphrasing are both ways of putting information into our own words and integrating it into our ideas. So, we're going to take a deeper, closer look at each of these in upcoming lessons. And in the meantime, you really should take a thought as to why we avoid plagiarism. First off, it avoids you having to do more work. Just because you plagiarize does not mean that you are off the hook. I'm not just going to slap a 0 on that paper and call it good. I'm going to make you do it again. You don't want to have to do it again because it's a lot of work to do it in the first place. So, you avoid having to do more work by avoiding plagiarism. You avoid getting in trouble. We know that when we plagiarize, there are consequences, and those consequences will vary depending on the situation and the plagiarism incident and all of that kind of thing, including what kind of class you're in. But you don't want to get in trouble, so we're going to avoid getting in trouble. The most important reason, however, is that by avoiding plagiarism, you are building trust and credibility with your reader, which gives you the reputation of being someone they can count on for information. One last question on the content, then we'll practice. To sum up, plagiarism is theft and it is lying. You are stealing another's words and or their ideas. We need to make sure that we do not plagiarize by properly citing, summarizing, paraphrasing, and integrating quotes to support our ideas while giving credit to the places and people that we got our supporting information from. So let's wrap this up with some more questions. This time we're going to practice to see if you can see when something is plagiarized and when it's not.